Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. This is Sunday, November 3rd, and this is your daily brief for what's going on in the war in Ukraine. It's looking like we're moving toward another record month, 1410 casualties for Russia overnight. 12 tanks, 36 armored fighting vehicles, uh, 10 artillery systems, 46 vehicles, and fuel tanks. Now, this is going to be a little different because what I'm going to actually do is focus much more on what's going on the front line and why these numbers are where they are. This is Andrew Perpetua's list. It looks really small, but there's 240-ish or so actual items on this, and it's about 5 to 1. Now, actually, sorry, 255 items total, and he actually tabulates or lists everything out. And now, a number of times people have asked, well, can you go over this? I don't generally go over this in detail. I give you like the big picture, but since he already did all the legwork, here we are. 255 items total, 206 of which are Russian, including 55 destroyed abandoned transport vehicles, motorcycles, ATVs, 7 destroyed abandoned trucks, 4 destroyed or abandoned APCs, 35 destroyed abandoned IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles, 13 destroyed abandoned captured tanks, 36 damaged or destroyed artillery pieces, 27 of which have destroyed barrels, 22 are surveillance comm equipment, including Starlink, plus 1 OSA got badly messed up. I'm not sure what OSA is. OSA. Ukraine, on the other hand, had 49, including 15 destroyed abandoned transports, 2 destroyed trucks, 2 destroyed abandoned MRAPs, 3 destroyed abandoned APCs, or armored personnel carriers, 2 destroyed abandoned IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles, 2 destroyed tanks, 1 destroyed counter battery radar, 5 pieces of communications equipment. So that gives you a sense of what's actually in this crazy list. Okay, now what happened overnight? 93 out of 96 Shahed drones shot down through regular or electronic means. 1 out of 1 missile. Okay, so that's a good night for Ukraine, and one of the Shaheds flew back to Belarus. Zelensky says Russia launched over 900 bombs, 30 rockets, and nearly 500 drones at Ukraine in 1 week. Just think about that. 1 week, all of that destruction coming at Ukraine. Russia is gradually ramping up its daily attacks with Shahed drones and missiles, still using Western components to do so. In October alone, that's 1 calendar month, over 2,000 Shaheds were launched against Ukraine. Shaheds requires over 170,000 individual components that should have been blocked from reaching Russia. Now, I'm not sure exactly how many of those are actually sanctioned, but you get the idea that there's a lot of components, and a lot of sanctioning should have put those out of the reach of the Russians, but it hasn't. They come from companies in China, Europe, and America. Sanctions must increase and be effective. Every scheme to bypass sanctions is a crime against people and the world. I think he's right. I mean, that's very fair. So this was in his evening address. ISW says that Russia may face air defense deficit, limiting aviation use at the front. Russia is experiencing supply issues with components for air defense production. If Ukraine significantly damages Russian systems, this shortage could restrict Russia's aviation capabilities, and that in turn would limit the glide bombs that can come in because they have to back way up. Meanwhile, there were explosions reported from Russian-occupied Crimea, air defense active, footage from certain areas like this air base near Russian-occupied Simferopol showed outgoing missiles. There are also reports of explosions from the Saki air base. So I'm not going to show the footage here. But yeah, Ukraine was trading it with the Russians last night. In fact, a second Russian Su-34 fighter bomber downed by Ukrainian F-16s, according to legitimate sources. This was carried in the Euromaidan press. Russian mill bloggers reported a mysterious aircraft downing on November 1st, speculating as Ukrainian F-16 involvement, potentially the second such since October 12th. So I didn't talk about that yesterday. That was the second. It happened on the first. I should have talked about it yesterday, but I hadn't had it. I saw it, but I hadn't seen it verified by a news source. And I try very hard to cite my sources and be as credible as possible. Okay. Overnight, mutual barrage on November 3rd comes as Russian forces accelerate their battlefield advances, pushing back Ukraine's exhausted, outmanned defenses in eastern Donbass region. So, Donbass, so particularly Donetsk, is where the worst of this is. And the Russians just keep coming. You see, like September was the highest month of the war until October, which was the highest month of the war as far as Russian casualties. And there's a reason for that, because the Russian casualties are coming because they keep coming in waves and attacking at particular places. Now, what I'm going to show you is about 6 or 7 different maps. And in these maps, you're going to see where they're attacking, and you're going to see how hard the Russians are attacking. You'll notice that these aren't where the Ukrainians are attacking. This is where Russia's on the offense for the most part here. During the day, the enemy carried out 7 offensive operations in the Seversk direction. On the Bakhmut front, Ukrainian defenders repulsed 1 assault, and then in the Turets direction, the Russians attacked 8 times near Turetsk. Okay, so you're seeing where the arrows are here. Now, again, this is going from least attacks to most attacks. Okay. In north of Kharkiv direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled 8 attacks by Russian fascist invaders in the area of Volchansk and Hatchini. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that. Hatchini. Okay, and 8 attacks there. In Pokrovsk direction, they tried 11 times to break through the Ukrainian defenses. Here's Pokrovsk, and here's a direction. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russian fascist invaders stormed Ukrainian positions 13 times. Okay? All right. In Ermivka of direction, Donetsk region, the Russians carried out 14 offensive actions. Okay? And that's where we're seeing here. Lyman direction, the Russians attacked 16 times, right along these lines. In the Kharkov direction, the Russian fascist invaders attacked the positions of Ukraine defenders 51 times in multiple places. Okay, 51 times. Wow. The battlefield's hot, and it's primarily the Russians pushing offensively. And that's where you're getting these casualties from. Now, Donetsk is by far I'm not familiar with War Mapper. I just found them recently, but they look reasonable. If you know anything about them one way or another, please put it in the comments below. Donetsk is by far the fastest moving front and showing no signs of slowing, with advances increasing in pace over the past 2 weeks. So the Russians had control of 58.42% of Donetsk in August, 59% of Donetsk in September, 60.59% in the end of September, beginning of October, 61.38 at the end of October, or near the end of October. They're up to 62.83% of Donetsk right now. They've been gaining some ground, but it's coming at a tremendous cost. Okay. Last little bit, I thought you'd find this interesting. Russian soldier found out North Korean comrades had brought them stewed cans of dog meat. He was just not happy about it. And he's posting this video. Hello, I saw online that our guys got a hold of these cans and ate them. And here, our guys also got the same crap from our brotherly nation. That's North Korea. They decided to try it, but one person thought to translate. He took out a translator and found that it's dog meat. Darn it. Meat of the blanking dog. They ate it. Darn it. And they didn't even know what they were eating. Next time, you can translate this crap and find out what you're putting in your mouth. So he's not happy about it, but I mean, they are coming from North Korea. What were you expecting exactly? And then finally, I'm going to end with this. This is Che Baos. Now, he's a Russian propagandist who's often on RT. And he said this, and again, the inverse, the reverse mirroring kind of effect that you see in Russian propaganda is always stunning to me. He says there's a serious difference on the front lines. While the Ukrainians that remain in the country are abducted and forced to fight for a corrupt dictator controlled by NATO, Russians volunteer for a fight which they understand is existential for their homeland. They are winning. Like, If you just replace the Russia and Ukrainian in that, it kind of makes sense. But the way he's saying this, like Russians are patriotically going, you know what? Sign me up. My wife and children are behind that line and I must defend them. That's not what's happening at all. All right, my friends, that's all that I have today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.